Good vach, everybody. Good hello, everybody. A very special week to everybody. Today is one of the most auspicious days in the calendar. It's Chai Elul. It's the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. And over the last many weeks, Rabbi Dubov has given up his time every Monday evening to take us on a Kabbalistic journey inspired by the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. He's taught us not that the Torah can't just be learnt on a simple level, but has to be learnt on a Kabbalistic, on a more spiritual level. He's introduced us to the spiritual worlds. Well, tonight we're going to do a poll. And in the poll, I'm going to ask everybody who's been participating in these programs to, I don't want to say to vote, but to participate. Rosh Hashanah is a time for giving gifts. So in the poll, I'm going to ask everybody to commit themselves to something. And that is going to be given to Rabbi Dubov, who's never asked for anything, for giving these unbelievable, inspiring talks over the last many weeks. And please God, through our merit, through the merit of us showing appreciation for somebody who's given us so much, may God show appreciation to each and every one of us and inscribe us and our families for a good, sweet year. And tonight, Rabbi Dubov is going to take us on another one of his spiritual adventures, and we look forward to hearing you. Thank you, Rabbi Dubov. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Mesinta, and good evening, everybody. By Chassidim, we say good Yontiv. On Chai Elul, the 18th of Elul, as Rabbi Mesinta mentioned, we say to each other, not just good evening, how are you? We will say good Yontiv. Because today, is truly a good day. It's a Yom Tov. It's a festival. It's a beautiful day. Because of those two great luminaries, which God blessed the world with on this day, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, and the day of his revelation, the day upon which was born the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, who illuminated the world with Shnei Or, with two lights, the light of the revealed parts of the Torah and the light of the mystical. And tonight I'd like to invite you to join me on a beautiful journey, a journey of the soul through the month of Tishrei. We are standing exactly 12 days before Rosh Hashanah. And we're taught that the 12 days from Chai Elul, the 18th of Elul, until Rosh Hashanah correspond to the 12 months of the year that have gone by. And each day, we should think about what did we achieve during that specific month. And hence, the day of Chai Elul, the 18th of Elul, which is a day which brings chayas, vibrance, vitality, exuberance into our service of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li, of our attachment to Hashem and his reciprocity on the high holy days. We've got to zoom in, excuse the expression, on the month of Tishrei last year. Because Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, the control center of the year, decided everything that was going to take place this year. And wow, what a year it's been. And that month, the month of Tishrei, bygone, today, we've got to think about what did we achieve in that month, but most importantly, what are we going to achieve in the coming month, in the month of Tishrei to come? What are we going to achieve on Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of Teshuvah, Yom sail through it and wave as if it didn't affect us. We wish ourselves and each other a Shana toiva u'mesuka, meaning it should be a good and sweet new year. And of course, the idea is that the word shana comes from the word shinui, shinui meaning a change. Shana tova, it should be a good change for us. It should be a moment of change, of where our lives change, of where we may have been one person until now, but we're going to be another from now on. And of course, those changes are small but steady. They are incremental yet steadfast. And the moments of change are the high holy days and the days of the month and the festival of Tishrei. It's interesting. Tishrei is the name of the month, and it has inside it the words Rashis, but spelled backwards. Rashis means it's the beginning, and at the end, which is the Taf, Shin Reish Yud, we look backwards over the year. What did we achieve last Tishrei? But how can we make a better new year ahead? So please join me in this beautiful, Kabbalistic, mystical journey of the soul. And the first thing which I'm going to ask you to do is to imagine you're in a theater and you've come to hear some Philharmonic orchestra playing a beautiful concerto. Why do I say that? Because there are so many different movements in the music. When the music is racing, it races your soul. When the music is solemn, somber, it can bring you to tears. When the music is joyful, it brings you to happiness. Well, imagine the month of Tishrei sitting in a theater and listening to the symphony of your soul. We're going to study all the various movements, the slow ones, the somber ones, the solemn ones, the fast ones, the exciting ones. So let's start with Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. You know, the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, whose birthday it is today, gives a beautiful mashal, a beautiful parable. Imagine two people standing back to back with each other. They're very, very close with each other. They're touching each other, and yet they're looking in opposite directions. What happens when they turn around? Well, initially, the shock. They didn't realize that the other person was standing right there besides them. And then, of course, when they realize that the person who is standing there is in fact their beloved, after they've recoiled and recovered from the initial shock, there is the embrace, the hug, the kiss, and the dance. The Alter Rebbe says those are the soul movements of Tishrei. The whole year round, we move through a year, all the various different changes, seasons, times of the year. But sometimes we're just not fully cognizant that the Almighty is standing there right beside us. And sometimes we're just looking in the opposite direction. And so there needs to be a time in the year when we do teshuvah, we return, we turn around. And that realization, that cognizance is the spiritual service of Rosh Hashanah, the day of the coronation of the king. If there's one word which is more recurrent throughout the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah than any other, it's the word HaMelech, the king. We say in the Amida, instead of HaKeil HaKadosh, we say HaMelech HaKadosh. When the Chazan goes to the Amud for Shacharis, He starts with the word HaMelech, the king. In fact, there is no vidui, confession of sins on Rosh Hashanah. We leave that for Yom Kippur. An open mention of Teshuvah, we do say Teshuvah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, that Teshuvah, prayer, and Tzedakah take away the evil decree. But the main focus of Rosh Hashanah is the coronation of the king, the bugle of the shofar, which trumpets the king into our lives, and the moment of coronation, when a Jew accepts the kingship of the Almighty. The king is here. The Baal Habayis, the one who is the owner of the house, is standing right by us. And consequently, the soul movement is one of bitul, complete nullification. You know, they tell a story that once the Tsar of Russia met, I think it was the King of Prussia, and they were boasting to each other how great their armies and soldiers were. So the Tsar said to the king, call one of your soldiers and let's go up to the roof of the palace. And the Tsar called one of his soldiers, and all four of them went up to the roof. And then the Tsar said to the King of Prussia, now tell your soldier to jump off the roof. So the King of Prussia said, Franz, jump off the roof. The soldier was shocked, and he said, yes, Your Majesty, but please, I beg you to take care of my wife and children, and in my service of you, I beg you to take care of them. The Tsar said, hold on a minute. Ivan, he called him, jump off the roof. Ivan said, which side, Your Majesty? Of course, that's the difference between them. The Russian soldier, he wasn't a being for himself. His whole being was the king. When the king said to do something, he jumped. On Rosh Hashanah, we accept the kingship of Hashem, HaMelech. But that also begs the question that anybody who's seen the coronation of Queen Elizabeth in Westminster Abbey will know, oh, the pomp and ceremony. Could you imagine when the Archbishop is just about to place the crown on the Queen's head, and some commoner runs up to the Queen and says, hey, Elizabeth, do me a favor, and I have this and this need. Could you do me a favor and make sure that I get it? What a chutzpah. At the moment of the coronation of the Queen, are commoners thinking about their own needs? And this is a general question which we have on Rosh Hashanah. Seemingly, there is the emphasis on the king, which would surely arouse a soul movement of complete nullification by the servants. And yet at the same time, we ask on Rosh Hashanah, and we know on Rosh Hashanah is the din, is the judgments for all our material needs throughout the year. We ask, Kosveinu l'chayim, we should be written in a good life for Banei, Chaye, Omezone, with children, good health, sustenance, parnasa, income, and particularly this year, good health. How do we ask all these things from the king at the moment of coronation? In our previous classes, we explained, one of the explanations we brought was from the tefillah of Hannah, how Hannah taught us that one doesn't ask for oneself, but rather one asks, God, give me so that I may give others. Give me resource so I may share it with others. Give me good health so that I may serve you. That's one dimension. The other dimension is that when we say Kosveinu l'chaim, write us into life, what we're actually saying to God is, God, I accept your kingship, but I understand that it is not limited to the four walls of the synagogue, but your kingship extends to the entire world. And in my world, in my microcosm, to every echelon of my being, endeavor, operation, and experience. And consequently, even in the mundane, eating, sleeping, commerce, conversation, socializing, I know you are there, and I am here for you. In other words, our relationship with Hashem permeates and diffuses through every detail of which we are asking for on Rosh Hashanah. And so on Rosh Hashanah, we don't waste time. We don't sleep on Rosh Hashanah during the day. We don't go to sleep. Somebody who sleeps on Rosh Hashanah, it says their mazel sleeps the whole year. If one falls asleep because one's exhausted, that's one thing, but we don't go to sleep. We use every single moment like a servant before a king. In Chabad, the custom is to say Tehillim, which is a form of simple service of recital of words, but it's said like a servant before their master. Avinu Malkeinu. There's that double relationship of our Father, im kavonim, im karachamenu karachim aval bonim. If it's the Father we're relationship, we're looking to God, please have mercy on us like a father has on children, im kavodim. And if it's like servants, then you're the king. Have mercy on your servants. And there's the mitzvah of the day. The mitzvah of the day is shofar, although the first day this year is Shabbos. We explained previously that Shabbos itself has the effect which the shofar usually has, but on the second day we blow the shofar. And the shofar is the cry of the soul being so distant. That soul which came from a heavenly source, that soul which was one with the Almighty before it descended to this world, is now in a far distant land. Baal Shem Tov, the birthday of Chai Elul, once gave a beautiful mashal of how the king had once a son who he sent to a faraway country. And in time, the son squandered his resources and became assimilated into the land into which he was sent, even forgetting the language of the palace. And many years passed, and one day the son had this tremendous desire to return to his father's palace, and after a long and arduous journey arrived back at the palace, but he couldn't even enunciate the words of how to get in, and the only thing he could do was to stand outside because nobody recognized him. And so after that long journey, the only thing the son could do was just to cry. And the king heard the cry of the child, and the king let the child in. That's the cry of the shofar. It's not articulated, verbalized in words, because words cannot contain the cry of the quintessence of the Jew of the Pintaliyah. When a Jew cries on Rosh Hashanah, it's one essence touching the other essence and becoming one. It's the coronation. It's the recognition, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you are the Melech. Kablu Malchusi, says the Talmud. On Rosh Hashanah, you accept the kingship. And thereafter, you accept the decrees. Not because it's Kabbalah's oil, like a ox accepting a yoke. And yet, our sages talk about Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shamayim, the accepting of the yoke of heaven. The reason they choose that language is because Rav Tuvua is B'koyach Shoy. An ox, more than a human being, can produce a lot of fodder by plowing. It's got a lot of energy when it's goaded in the correct direction. So the yoke is a phenomenal instrument because it harnesses the power of the ox to plow. We have considerable energies, but let loose can be quite devastating. We need a harness. That harness is the yoke of Torah or mitzvahs, which goad us and guide us through life, separating us from the pitfalls and allowing us to plow through the field and to produce many fruits. And so we go through these 10 days of teshuvah. Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli said the word teshuvah is made of 5 letters: Taf, Shin, Vav, Ves, Hey. And each letter corresponds to another sentence, pasuk, in the Torah. Taf stands for Tomim Tia Im Hashem Elokecha. Walk, how shall I translate it? Earnestly with God. This isn't a joke life. That doesn't mean to say you shouldn't have a sense of humor, but it's a serious thing. We're sent down here for a certain amount of time to achieve a certain purpose. In generally, is to keep Torah mitzvahs, and each soul has a certain purpose within that, and tailor-made descends to a certain locale, a certain soul in a certain time, in a certain place, for a certain amount of time in order to fulfill their obligation and fulfill their soul mission. But one must treat it earnestly. Shin, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, set God constantly before me. It's a verse which is on the top of many arcs in the synagogue. But the Baal Shem Tov, the birthday of Chai Elul, in his book Tzavoas Harivosh, gave a beautiful interpretation of it. He said, Shivisi comes from the word shaveh, which in Hebrew means equal. Serve God with equanimity. Understand that yes and no is equal. Understand that there are blessings and there are revealed goods, and sometimes there are things which are concealed goods. But the Almighty is in charge, and it's all from and for the boss. Vav, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamecha. Understand, as it says in the beginning of this week's Parsha Netzavim, all of us stand before the Almighty. It's a jigsaw puzzle of so many pieces, but if one piece is missing, the entire picture is invalid. Every single person has a unique contribution. There's no such thing as one having it all and relegating the other. We all spiritually need each other, and hence we need to be of lowly spirit, because there's something which you have which I don't have. There's something which you can contribute which I can't, and the job of a Rebbe is to bring out that unique quality within every individual. That's why he's called a Nossi, because he lifts up. Veis, b'chol derochecha de'ehu, know him in all your ways, not just in spiritual endeavors, but even when a person is engaged in relaxation, in the gym, know him in all your ways. The Rambam says, a healthy body is midarke haboirahu. So you're for out there jogging or playing tennis or golfing, make it part of your service of Hashem. And finally, hey, hatzmei alecha sim elokecha. Walk modestly with God. You don't need to have your name in the front page of the papers. If you want to encourage others, says Rabbeinu Shlomo ben Aderet, the Rashba, in order to encourage others to do a mitzvah, yes. Otherwise, do it discreetly. Hashem knows. There's an amazing story of the Baal Shem Tov, that in fact, whose soul was the Baal Shem Tov's soul? There's an amazing story that in fact his soul was a reincarnation of a soul of a simple Jew in the city of Tzfat, to which Elijah the prophet came and said that he will reveal to him all the secrets of the Torah on the condition that the Jew reveals to Elijah what he did on the day of his bar mitzvah. And the simple Jew said to Eliyahu Hanavi, I'm sorry, what I did was for Hashem. I'm not looking for any reward, and therefore I'm not going to tell you. And Eliyahu Hanavi was instructed from above, nevertheless, to go down and teach that Jew. That Jew became great in Torah, in the revealed and concealed aspects of the Torah, but died anonymously. And it was later decreed that that soul descend again in the soul of the Baal Shem Tov. So think about it. The whole Hasidic movement was based on an anonymous deed. And then we come to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the most joyous day of the year. Might not seem that way. I know your tongue is rumbling, and I know you're looking at your watch. When is this going to be over? But the Talmud says in Tractate Tanis that Lo Hoyu Yomim Tovim LiYisrael, there was no greater Yom Tov for the Jewish people like Yom Kippur. And the truth is, it is great, because Yom Kippur means change. Yom Kippur means that first, on a simple level, we can jettison all the baggage, we can leave it somewhere, and we can move on, and we can change. And that is the greatest gift. In the cake of Teshuvah, you have the three ingredients of charata, regret over the past, which is the principal service of the eve of Yom Kippur. And then you have Kabbalah al-Haba, the decisions for the future, turning a new leaf, which is the principal service of the day of Yom Kippur. And then you have the vidui, the verbal articulation of what one has done. And Kabbalistically, the reason we have to articulate it verbally is because since most of the things we did wrong was with our mouths, therefore we need to use our mouths to say words which will create spiritual positivity, which will take away the negativity that we've created. By the way, I must put I must say that the halacha says that if a person has actually offended somebody else, they must ask them for forgiveness before Yom Kippur. They can't ask God for forgiveness if they've offended another person. What's the Kabbalah of Yom Kippur? What's the esoteric dimension of Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is an inward bound journey. Yom Kippur is the journey of the high priest into the Holy of Holies. Yom Kippur is the Venn diagram of soul, time, and place, where the holiest soul, the high priest, goes in the holiest time, Yom Kippur, into the holiest place, the Holy of Holies, into the temple. And that is reenacted in the Musaf of Yom Kippur. It's long. The liturgy is very long, but it's actually the most exciting bit of Yom Kippur, because you're the high priest, and today's Yom Kippur, and you're on this inward bound journey. And what do you find? Well, there are 5 levels to the soul. The Midrash says they're called Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. The Kabbalah explains that they correlate to the worlds. Nefesh is in the world of Asiya, Ruach is in the world of Yetzira, Neshama is in the world of Bria, Chaya is in the world of Atzilus, and Yechida is the world of Keser, or Haya, Adam Kadmon. Chassidus explains it, though, that those are all names of the soul. But there's the actual essence of the soul, which stands even higher than that. This is what we say in the verses of Yom Kippur in the Torah, Lifnei Hashem titharu. Before God, you will be purified. The Alter Rebbe, the birthday of Chai Elul, explains, what does it mean, Lifnei Hashem? The 4 letters, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei, correspond to the 4 worlds. Yud is in the world of Atzilus, Hey in the world of Bria, Vav in the world of Yetzirah, Hey in the world of Asiya. Lifnei Hashem. On Yom Kippur, you access the 5th level at the 5th prayer, of the prayer of Ne'ilah, the height of Yom Kippur. The word translates Ne'ilah is, the gates are closing, get your last request in. In the Hasidic perspective, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean that the gates are closing and you're shut out. What it means is that this is the moment that God brings the soul in, shuts the door to the exclusion of everything else. Yechida leyachtach. At that moment, you are one. You've been elevated. At that moment, in simple language, you've come home. That's pristine. That's refreshing. That's atonement. Because you realize that all the crazy stuff which you did during the year was nourished, as they say in Yiddish. It was folly. It was stupidity. It was a waste. And when you're elevated and you become higher and you gain a more pristine perspective, you realize that you had to step out for one day and become angelic like you do on Yom Kippur in order to re-enter a changed person. But then, after Yom Kippur, you're on a high. You've got the 4 days in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, which correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. In fact, the Baal Shem Tov said that the day after Yom Kippur is called God's Nomen, God's name, because the 4 days correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. And then you have the festival of Sukkot. After the intense moments of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when you've accepted God as the king, and on Yom Kippur you've accepted his decrees and jettisoned and said al-Chait, that you don't want to be lacking in the coming year, but you really want to accept upon yourself the mitzvahs as you should do, then you're on a high. What do you need to do then? Then comes the festival of Sukkot. Then comes the hug, the embrace. Hashem says, come, let's hug each other for 7 days inside the sukkah. Come in the sukkah with me. Everything inside a mitzvah. Let the 4 walls of the sukkah, which correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, completely embrace you. The sechach of the sukkah. Sechach is samach, chaf, chaf. Samach numerically is 60, chaf 20, final chaf 20. 60 plus 20 plus 20 is 100. The 100 sounds of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. The cloud of the incense of Yom Kippur is represented in the sechach, in the sense that the sukkah represents the protection of the clouds of glory, the envelope in which God is posting you for this coming year, to be shrouded, wrapped, enveloped, and hugged by Hashem, with everything, with your table, with your l'chaim. And then on Sukkot, that makif, that peripheral sechach, that spiritual, pristine experience of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, which can easily evaporate just like that, needs to be internalized. How do we do that? We take the Arba Minim, the Lulav, the Esrog, the Hadas, the Arava, which correspond to the spine, the eyes, the lips, the heart, and we shake the Arba Minim in the Sukkah. In Kabbalah, it says the words Lahamshich Hamakif Bipnimius, in order to bring down the peripheral experience and integrate it within the limbs. Because the Talmud says, Ganva apum machtata rachmana karya. A thief, whilst he's stealing, often prays to God to ask him for help. What a ridiculous thing. He's transgressing, thou shalt not steal, and he's asking God to help him. How is that possible? The answer is very simple. He believes in God, but his belief didn't reach his hands. It's somewhere up there. It didn't filter down into his thieving hands. And so what's important over here is integration. And hence we take the Lulav and Esrog. 7 days through the 7 days of the week. And so we've had an experience of Rosh Hashanah. We've had that experience of accepting God as a king, of Yom Kippur, of the inward bound journey, of doing tshuva, turning over a new leaf, of capturing for 7 days that peripheral, exciting experience and integrating it. And finally, we come to Shmini Atzeres, on which God says, stop. Atzor is a sign in Israel, which means stop. Stop. What have you achieved? What have you taken with you from this whole experience? And straight after that, Simchas Torah. There is a beautiful saying of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said as follows: on Simchas Torah, the Sefer Torah would love to jump out of the ark and dance. It's Simchas Torah. This is the generator of joy for the entire year. The Torah wants to dance in the world. But alas, it has no feet. And so the Torah says to the Jew, you be my feet. You take me out and you be the vehicle and let me dance with your feet. It's such a brilliant idea. Torah is the will and wisdom of God. It is that will and wisdom that wants to dance in the world, but it needs feet. It needs a vehicle. It needs us to take it and to apply it. And the only way which we can bulldoze through the mountains of obstacles is with simcha, is with joy, because joy is a bulldozer. Simcha breaks all barriers. And consequently, when we experience the intense simcha of Simchas Torah, dancing in a circle, dancing in this never-ending joy of having the honor to serve Hashem, of having the great zechus merit of doing one of his mitzvahs, of knowing that we are in safe and good hands, that is intense. And it's the source of joy, of simcha for the whole year. And then our journey is complete. Today, Chai Elo, we can look back on the month of Tishrei bygone and say, what did we achieve then? Wow. Well, it has been a year, hasn't it? But let this coming year be Pei Aleph, a year of Ploi Sareno, a year we'll see wonders, wonders in ourselves, wonders of how we can transform, of how we can use the concerto, this symphony of Tishrei, to completely transform ourselves. Bein Adam lachaveroi, in our interpersonal relationships, ubein Adam lamokom, and with our relationship with God. Yehi Ratzain, may it be Hashem's will that all of us should be inscribed and sealed for a healthy, happy, and sweet new year. And may we use this journey, the soul journey of Tishrei, to travel in all the various movements of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the 10 days of Teshuvah, the days in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, the beautiful mitzvah of Sukkah and the shaking of the Arba Minim and the dance with the Torah on Simchas Torah. It's a life-transforming experience. Grab onto it. Don't just wave and see it pass. Don't let this Tishrei just be yet another season, high holy day season. Don't just buy your ticket and then press the back to normal mode. Let yourself be carried aloft by this soul transformation. Let yourself understand that this coming year can be a transformative year for you, for me, for us, for all of Israel, and most important for the entire world, with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'mheira v'yameinu. Amen.